Maggie, how are you feeling about turning 30?
That's a loaded question to start the episode with.
I know it's going to be a fun one. I'm Mallory Hagan.
And I'm Maggie Gelson Burnett. This is Pretty Furious.
Look, we have a special guest today, everyone.
Pepper Ann.
Pepper Ann is joining us because my headphones. She could not simply, for one more minute, be in this room, but not in my lap. Like
She had to join the girls.
Yeah.
Pepper Ann's pretty furious too.
All right, this episode is all about what it's like to cross over into the wide unknown of being 30.
Into the abyss.
Into the abyss. I've got some actually great commentary from people who follow us online, which I look forward to sharing with you.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear people's thoughts. I recently published a post this week on my Substack talking about turning 30, thoughts I had leading into this birthday. I turned 30 in July, end of July. And so, I feel like I've been thinking about these things for the last 5 years. And I just wanted to kind of like air out my diary on the internet, which is something I do pretty regularly. And so it all kind of came into this post on Substack about kind of this like proverbial time goblin that's like residing on my back all the time and what that looks like as I am swiftly approaching turning 30.
I think you're going to find so much to be happy about on the other side of this stupid number.
Yeah,
it's a silly
totally.
number. We're going to get into what 30 feels like and even beyond from some of that commentary I was talking about. But before we do that, I'm pretty furious about a lot of shit going on in the world. Let's hit them with the headlines. What has made you pretty furious this week?
So, by the way, I'm so happy to be doing a headline. I feel like we haven't done a headline in a minute, and I'm very excited about it. Okay,
yeah, I don't know why we fell off of doing that. Sorry, guys, but here they are. They're back.
I think it was because we were just like constantly doing like big mad episodes and deep dives, and we were like, okay, so obviously you know what we're mad about. So
yeah, this is one big headline.
Yeah. So my headline today is from the New York Times. This was released earlier this week, and this headline says the FDA is poised to restrict access to COVID vaccines. So this, like I said, was released earlier in the week and basically highlights a few things. So, come fall, the FDA has decided to basically restrict access to who has the ability to get a COVID vaccine or a COVID booster. So, anyone 65 or older will immediately have access to them and will continue to have access to them. And then anybody under age 65 will have to have some kind of like specific medical condition to get the vaccine. So, this infuriates me for a variety of reasons, but let's maybe point out the most obvious, which is that this is coming from a party who is all about like claiming that they're doing things for family values, that they're claiming that they're doing things for children. And one of the key components of this article is understanding that children are one of the most vulnerable populations when it comes to and specifically when it comes to new strains of COVID, because every year since COVID, I think it's been every year or just about every year, we have seen a new strain of COVID develop.
Yeah.
And so this younger population is incredibly susceptible to contracting COVID, and they are also the ones alongside those 65 and older who are the most susceptible to major illness or sometimes even death after having COVID. So I think this is really just, again, a very good insight into what Republicans are actually trying to do, which is that, okay, if we just remove all of the funding for all these different organizations, if we remove funding for people of color for access to their healthcare, for children access to their healthcare, people who can't afford healthcare for their children, if we remove things like Head Start, which are for lower income families, if we remove access to key programs for people with disabilities, this is all like eugenics in real time. And so that's another key component of, I think the component of this piece of, it's not necessarily legislation, but this decision that the FDA is making. If we can just remove all of these like less than desirable groups, we can have,
A
the
white Christian
human
nation.
race of our dreams. Yeah, and it's like, cool, we've seen this play out before.
You know
So,
what I think
yeah.
is really interesting about that, though, is that if somebody who is 65 or older still has access because they are high risk, they're indicating that the COVID vaccine works. If a high
Correct.
risk population is able to get access, then it works.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the other components of this article is that the man who heads up the FDA and his counterpart who is at the Center for Biological something or other. Sorry, guys. Very, very eloquent speaker today. But these two doctors basically are saying that we don't have enough data to understand how the COVID vaccine prevents the illness or prevents the spread of the illness. And in fact, what this article highlights, it's like literally the next sentence right after it says, but in actuality, like we do have a really robust set of data to indicate that this is a incredibly effective vaccine. And so I also just want to note from a personal standpoint, I have never had COVID in my
Whoa.
entire life. So not that I
Wow.
know of, at least. I've never had COVID.
Cheers from
I've
the
not.
audience.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I am probably like a one percenter. And I just want everyone to understand that like I have had a COVID booster every single chance I have had to get one. So I have gotten, probably at this point, 4 or 5 COVID boosters. Am I saying that that's the entire reason that I haven't had COVID, again, to my knowledge yet? No, not necessarily, but I do think it plays a hell of a role. Like, so, meanwhile, my husband got the, like Walmart Johnson and Johnson shot back in 2020 or 2021, whenever, and has not been vaccinated since for COVID and has not gotten a booster since and has had COVID like 10 times. It's like, so it's hard to look at even just sort of data within like your own life in your own existence and be like, nah, this doesn't work. Fuck this, man. Like, so I don't know. It's just, again, there's so many contradictions within this party and within this administration. And we're seeing it play out in basically every department of the administration. So next week we have Dr. Jessica Nurick, who is joining us. And if you have been somebody who's been immersed in sort of like understanding MAHA content or understanding the fear mongering tactics that MAHA influencers use, you probably know Dr. Jessica. She is just an absolute delight of a person. Like, if you don't follow her already on Instagram, you must go follow her. Her content is incredibly educational. And I think she probably has done a lot of work in helping people who maybe were on sort of this like wellness to alt-right pipeline understand their health in a more efficient way and understand not only their health, but also nutrition from an actually like science-backed approach. So she is coming on next week. We are so excited. I could literally scream. I'm dying to ask her so many questions. So yeah, that's a little teaser. I'll be interested to hear her thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode. I'm looking forward to it too. And we're accepting anyone's questions. So if you have a question for her regarding the vaccines or MAHA or anything, really, that would be a great thing to send to us via DM or leave a comment, whatever you got. Meanwhile, if you aren't following us on all of our platforms, to include Substack, please do.
Yeah.
It is a Pretty Furious Pod, and we would love a review as well. If you're feeling fancy, we would appreciate it.
Mallory, what is your headline from this week?
My headline is that... What? Why are you laughing?
I'm just so ready for you to share this. I can't wait.
If I can get through sharing without the person mowing the grass outside, my dog squeaking a toy, jumping on me.
I actually can't hear... I can't hear it anymore.
It seems to be far away right now.
Yeah, you're good.
My ADHD brain is just all over the place. I don't even know if it's that. I think it might be pregnancy brain for real. But anyway, my headline. This past week, former President Biden announced that he has stage 4 prostate cancer. And first and foremost, I just want to say that's a really hard thing to have to announce, period. It's a hard thing to have to deal with. It is pretty aggressive and pretty advanced. And at his age, that's just a lot. And for somebody who's dedicated their life essentially to public service and to our country, I just hate to hear that. And what I hate more than that is watching the right and MAGA and the media turn it into a feeding frenzy of whether or not he was mentally capable of doing the job of president while he was doing it. And I say that not because there weren't rightful questions about his mental acuity while he was president, But we have someone who is currently the president who is mentally unstable. And what bothers me is that instead of focusing on the fact that we now have another elderly man as president who is mentally unfit, regularly loses his train of thought, doesn't make sense, jumbles over words, says the wrong thing, smells like shit by various sources, instead of focusing on that, many people say he soils his pants, he smells awful, like he smells
Are you
like...
fucking serious?
I'm being dead serious.
My God.
Oh, yeah, go Google it. Plenty of people who have been in his presence say he smells like a diaper. So, my point is, instead of us focusing on that, because he's the person who still has 3.5 years left of running this country into the ground, but running the country, they've taken a moment where a former president who's in his early 80s, when he announced he has cancer, to absolutely diminish his name, question his ability. And I'm telling you right now, they started talking about the fact that they used the auto pen during his presidency to sign executive orders and to sign bills into law, which is a normal thing that presidents do. Now they're starting to talk about that, in essence, to question whether or not the things he signed into law are actually lawful. And that's really going to start pissing us off. But mark my words, we're about to see them roll back Biden era policies because he, quote, signed it with an auto pen, and they're trying to delegitimize whether or not those things are valid. So that's what I'm pretty furious about. Focus on the fact that we've got a psychopath in the White House. Let's not focus on President Biden. He's done. We say thank you. Let that man live the rest of his life in peace.
Yeah, absolutely. So prostate cancer is what killed my grandfather.
I'm sorry.
That is, it's so infuriating to watch people see this man again who did great things as a president. Like, let's be clear that Joe Biden also reversed a lot of the economic issues that Trump fucked up for us. He helped us to recover from the COVID pandemic. He helped us we
recovered better and faster than every other
Yep.
industrialized country around the world. And at the end of Biden's presidency, economists globally said that the United States economy was, quote, the envy of the world.
Yep.
So
look where we are now.
Every single person who was like the economy, inflation, and they voted for Donald Trump with that as their main driving force, I just want to say, go read a damn book.
I know. The entire right. I'm just like, when we look at Donald Trump, the problem I think that comes up for me at the forefront is that we're trying to reconcile with people who are in a cult, first of all. So if you look up anything about how Trump leads and how he speaks to his constituents, how he speaks to the people who love him, and how he speaks to the people who don't, it is textbook A, sociopathic behavior, and B, cult leader behavior. That's exactly what it is, textbook. And we have had many, many professionals who are in the industry of psychotherapy, of mental health, who have all said unanimously that this man has several mental disorders, narcissistic personality disorder, sociopath, like all of it.
And the beginning signs of dementia.
Exactly. And so now people are taking all of this ammo, this cancer diagnosis from Joe Biden, using it towards him, when in reality, like, if the roles were reversed, it's insane to me that people still think that Donald Trump is, quote, fit to be president. Like, there is no world in which that is true, factually.
And also, if you're a person who at this point is saying, well, all those experts are wrong, I just want you to know that is also textbook cult.
Exactly.
Like if you're looking at a panel of experts who are all unanimously saying something, and you're like, nah, that's not true. Hello, you're in a cult.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations, you failed that test.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I just find all that frustrating. And to be really honest, I also find the commentary right now happening around the Democratic Party, which does have its faults. Do not get me wrong. There's a lot of old people on both sides of the aisle leading, refusing to pass the torch. There are not enough millennials in any states of representation across the country, from state government all the way to federal. That is an issue, but it is an issue across the aisle. The Democratic Party has its faults and has its problems, but the continual, like, this is why the Democrats won, when you're up against a cult leader, is just kind of on my nerves. Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yes, can we evaluate and do better? For sure. But if you looked at an adjudicated rapist, 34-time felon, and you still made the choice to vote for him, the Democrats were never going to call you over. Like, we were just weren't going to do it. So I've just seen so much commentary around that in conjunction with Biden's health. And I just want to put that out there. If they're willing to vote for him, they weren't coming our direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could we have invigorated the people on the far left potentially? Sure. Would that have been reality for the majority of the country? Maybe not. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We could pontificate that for hours maybe, but
Yeah. Yeah. Democratic Party definitely has its faults, but it's not something that's going to get fixed within this current administration alone. And it's also not something that gets fixed by pointing fingers at other Democrats being like, you know, you did this wrong. Well, you did this wrong. It's like, y'all, there is a literal cult leader on the right who is in office right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's fucking relax.
Who's stripping away our rights and putting Fox News anchors in positions of real power. And they
Exactly.
don't know what, things like habeas corpus mean. So
Exactly.
anyway, deep breath. We can't be pretty furious without being pretty first. What do you got?
I've got not a lip product this week. So this is the Say.
I've never used anything from them.
I really like this. It's the Glowy Super Gel. I have the shade Warm Glow. It's so nice. So it's basically just like it's just like a moisturizer with like a little bit of shimmer-ish to it. It's like I don't know, it's got kind of like a sheen situation.
Nice.
It looks beautiful under like foundation. It looks beautiful if you are not wearing like any foundation and you want to just wear concealer. It's great for a no makeup day. I love it. What about you?
I think when I run out of the other 6 items that I have that add a glow to my naked skin, I'll pick that one up.
I know, there's so many.
There's so many things out there. Okay, so for me, I'm back on my Ulta Beauty brand kick, and this is the Weightless Water Lip Stain. What I love about this product is, first of all, lip stains are great, especially for the summer, especially if you live in the South. It's humid and hot, and things are like melting off of your face. So a stain I think is perfect because then you can just throw chapstick on top. But these in particular, and I've never experienced this before, I've learned you can layer it so it keeps getting darker and darker and darker. So one little swipe is a nice just little bit of color, and then this that I have on is like 3 or 4, and I imagine if I kept going it would just keep getting darker. So I'm into that. The Weightless Water by Ulta Beauty, it's like $10-11 right now, and we've already talked about Ulta has the best deals, so go get those points, boo-boo.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, well, lips, shimmer, all the things that society tells us we need to be beautiful, and especially as we age. And you are, in fact, aging. We both are.
I am, girl. I do be aging.
We both are. We both are. I wanted to do this because not only did I read what you wrote on Substack, and I'd love for you to share some of those thoughts that you're having for those people who haven't read it yet. Although if you're not subscribed to Maggie, you should be. And if you're not subscribed to us there, you should be. But I started thinking about it from the perspective of when I was 29, turning 30, I'd just come off of running a congressional campaign that I'd lost. Even though I knew I was going to lose, it's still, you lost. And I had no job. I was living with my parents. I just felt like, wow, I'm such a failure. Even though I had done these things that by many accounts made that not true. And I just felt so behind all of my friends. And in many ways, you're way ahead of where I was when I was 29. So I thought it might be very interesting to sort of ping pong how you're feeling about this time frame and what's to come. And then get some thoughts from women, not only our age, but older as well.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think the inspiration for like writing that piece was, so I have been fortunate enough to have a lot of friends and acquaintances who have done some pretty fucking major shit before turning 30. I have had friends who have grown their social media followings into the millions. I have had friends who have inked multiple six-figure advances on book deals. I have had friends who have, built custom homes that could be rivaled by that of what's in Architectural Digest. I have had friends who have like popped out a bunch of children before the age of 30 with no issues, and they, have nannies and support and all of the things. I've had friends who have done a lot before they have turned 30. And I think that's been incredible to watch, and it's been really inspiring, and I feel very lucky to even be like associated with those people. And also, it's been really challenging to watch because I think when you are somebody who has a very clear vision of what you want to do in this life, or you almost understand, you're sort of acutely aware and understand your purpose in this life, and then you're sort of like, your external doesn't really match the internal. It's sort of like what you're doing day to day isn't necessarily what you think you should be doing with your life, and it's not necessarily feasible to do the things that you want to do, right? It's not necessarily easy to just like go out and become a New York Times bestselling author and like write for a living and talk for a living and do, all of the things that I think I want to do with my life. So yeah, it's been really interesting to observe, and it's been a journey for sure of just sort of, I think for me, my career has been easily like the biggest area where I feel behind or sort of feel like I'm not doing what's really in alignment with like my purpose and all of that. And so, yeah, I think, I also feel lucky to, in this essay I wrote, I talked about my dad worked in radio for 25 years and then was very unexpectedly laid off by Clear Channel. And basically, right after that, worked kind of like some odd jobs here and there. And on the side, would come home from working all day and then would work on his voiceover business at night. And now he does voiceover for a living and has since I was probably 11. And he once told me, he was like, Maggie, I didn't know what I wanted to do till I was 50. And I think of that really quite often, that conversation, because it was so impactful and it kind of let me know that it's never too late. It's never too late to change course and do something different. And also, I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things fucking done. So it's
Yeah.
been a very there's kind of constant chatter in my brain of all of those things happening all the time.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm medicated.
I understand that. I also think it's a little bit of it's being the victim of the desire to achieve. And when they say you're a combination of your five closest friends or any one of those sayings that's like that, when you are surrounded by people who are constantly seeking more, doing better, trying to achieve the next thing, it can feel like if you're not on that same trajectory as them, even though you have those same ambitions, you're seeking that same type of next level every time you do something. It can feel like a lot if you're not quite hitting the mark in the way that you want to. Have you ever listened to Julia Louis-Dreyfus' podcast, Wiser Than Me?
The funny thing about Wiser Than Me is that you introduced me to it back when I interviewed you on Anne World Peace.
Oh, did
And
I?
so, yeah, you mentioned it on that call. And I don't remember if it was like in the recording or not, or if it was just after as we were gabbing. But I listened to, was it Jane Fonda who was on her show? I think she was on there at one point. And I listened to that episode and like absolutely loved it because she had a really great story of how she was like, if I would have achieved any of the stuff that I achieved later in life, like I wouldn't have known what to do with myself. Like I would have lived a very different life. And so I think of that, yeah, quite often too. And so, yeah, that podcast is great.
Yeah, there are so many women that she interviews that just constantly make you evaluate this feeling of not there yet. So I think one of my favorites is Diane von Furstenberg. She is in her 80s now and has obviously built this empire around DVF. For those who don't know who Diane von Furstenberg is, she was the creator or the inventor of the wrap dress and changed women's lives across the world with her wrap dress that, I think every woman in some way or another wishes they had in her closet. But in her interview, she just has such a perspective on every decade of her life and what it taught her and how she's so grateful for all of the good experiences and the bad experiences. One thing I didn't know about her was that she, first of all, she built this business that she has door to door with a catalog in her hand selling these dresses, but she almost lost all of it as well. So I just find people like her who have such perspective and gratitude on everything that they've been able to accomplish. And just like Jane Fonda, she was like, I wouldn't have, it took me till I'm 80 something to appreciate all of this and to understand the value of all of it. So I think if you're a person who is struggling in any decade, it's a great podcast to listen to. Such insightful and thoughtful conversation. But it makes me think about those of us who do wish to achieve a lot. And society has told us that there is a clock above our head and that when we hit 30, we are no longer good or valuable or worthy, or we're damaged goods and no one will want us and we're not worthy of having kids and just all this stuff, which just is simply not true.
Yeah.
I think you said career wise, that's where you feel the least fulfilled right now. What else feels icky to you?
Stinky.
Stinky.
Well, I'm sure you can relate to this, maybe in some capacity, that I think when you are somebody who has maybe always known that you've wanted children and you're a woman, there is, well, there's immense societal pressure to like have the baby ASAP and just get it done, sort of thing. There's also a lot of pressure to wait to have children until you are, quote, ready, until you have accomplished the things you want to accomplish, as if when you have a child, your life seemingly ends. And so I think my husband and I plan to begin trying to conceive this summer. And so I think that has been a very alarming, like, countdown, if you will, to this time where I'm like, holy shit, by this time next year, like, I could be a parent. That's insane. And I think that like sort of line of thinking is really puts a lot of pressure on you to get as much done as possible prior to having a child. Because again, we've been taught that our lives end when we have kids, our careers are over when we have kids, particularly women. Women are the people who see the biggest setback in their careers when they have kids. And so that is all based on, the data that we currently have. I'm not as much of a believer as like that millennials are in that position. I think we are kind of a unique generation sort of in that sense. But boomers, certainly, that was a huge kind of data point from their generation, was that women who took time off to be a mom, were not really able to go back to the workforce after they parented for 15, 18 years, So I think that's something that I really struggle with, is sort of this countdown to another major life transition, which is becoming a parent. So how do you feel about that, like about kind of accomplishing what you want before you have a child?
Well, I think on this side of it, I'm 36 and we haven't talked about this on the podcast yet, but if you're listening and you haven't seen, I announced recently that I am in fact pregnant.
Mallory's pregnant.
I'm at the time that we're recording this, I'm 18 weeks along, and it has really been for me in the last year that I've actually stepped away from the idea of needing to achieve and achieve and achieve more, quote, career wise. I was really extremely busy running for office and then worked on campaigns, worked for the Bloomberg campaign. Then I ran for office again. In the midst of that, was working for a nonprofit and have always just kind of been like in hustle mode. Even when I had a full-time job, I had other consulting gigs on the side. I was making money. Like, I just was always going. And I feel very fortunate that because of Kevin's career, I still make money and I make our fun money, basically. But if I wasn't making money, we would still survive and be okay. So that's taken a little bit of the pressure off. And I want to acknowledge that there's privilege in that. However, I also just hit this point where I was like, I've done a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't win either office I ran for, it was sort of like I like martyred myself a little bit. Like I knew I wasn't going to win, but we needed that face in Alabama and politics, and it just took a toll on me. So I think over the last couple of years, I've started to realize that like, it's okay. I've done enough. I'm 36. I've done enough.
Yeah,
and it's not
totally.
and it's not to say that I won't do a lot more. I don't know, but for right now, I'm embracing being just a little more still.
Yeah.
Working at my own pace, on my own time, And in preparation for this baby that's coming, this little boy, I I hear you. Now I've started to be like, okay, so when he's here, that at least for, 6 to 8 months, I'll have a hard time getting this work
Yeah.
done. I'll have to really be diligent about working while he's asleep or so. I think there is definitely, to your point, a bit of a mental clock that starts
Mm-hmm.
ticking about what you'll be able to do. How
Yeah.
much free time will you have? Will
Mm-hmm.
you be able to continue working? And
Yeah.
I think both of us kind of have haphazard schedules. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
ever set in stone. And so that does bring on a little bit of anxiety. But I think more than anything, I've just started to be like, listen, if I don't climb to Mount Everest in my career, it's going to be all right. There are
Yeah.
more important things
Yeah, totally.
to me in my world. And
Yeah.
I'm realizing that those important things are that every day I get to go for a walk
Mm-hmm.
and I get to take a nap if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm available to pick our boys up from school. Like there
Mm-hmm.
are things that I'm realizing bring me more joy and more fulfillment and I'm still contributing positively to society by doing
Yeah.
them. By
Mm-hmm.
raising good human beings, you're still contributing positively and in an important way to society.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it sort of begs the question of when is it enough? This question of like when will it ever be enough? And the answer to that is never if you're somebody who kind of keeps moving the goalpost. Uh so I think that's a really like insightful take and really a lovely take that like it isn't always about just trying to achieve something and always about the accolades that come from it or about the notoriety that you receive from doing something or from creating something. It can also just be about like your own kind of personal contribution to the world, which could be argued as like the most impactful thing you can do is like what's within your realm of control and what you can contribute to those around you that is positive in moving our world forward to a better place
Yeah.
than where we are now. So, yeah, I think of that question a lot of like, when will it ever be enough? Because I think there's a really fascinating data point of like, I'm going to butcher this, but my friend, the lovely Katie Gaddy, who runs Money with Katie, she told me about this data point one time where it's essentially that households that start making, or people that start making about $75,000 a year. I think this was at the time was about $75,000 a year. It's probably like $350,000 now, or
God.
350K a year now. But at the time, it was about 75K a year. Was what made people like you would be really, really happy or really striving to make more money until that point. And once you got to that point, your happiness would increase. And then after that, any additional income that you made, your happiness sort of stayed the same.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a really interesting kind of like study into the human psyche of like what really drives us, what's the motivating factors behind what we do, and how success, money, achieving accolades can't always be the thing that moves us
Uh-huh.
forward and can't always be the driving force behind everything we do. It's why I think you're fucking weird if you're a billionaire, okay? Like,
Yeah.
I think you're mentally unwell. So,
Well, I mean, the saying "money can't buy you happiness" for anyone who's ever struggled knows that that's not true. Money
right.
can buy you a baseline level of happiness because that happiness comes from the security of knowing that your bills are paid, you have food on the table,
Exactly.
your kids are taken care of, and you can go on
Hmm.
vacation. But I
Hmm.
do believe that's correct. At a certain
Yeah.
point, we often in our household talk about what's next for Kevin's career, which will
Yeah.
financially put us in a very different position than we're in now in a positive way. And we talk a lot about how like this house we just bought won't change. We're not
Yeah.
moving to a bigger
Hmm.
house, you know.
Exactly.
We're adding a kid to the mix. We'll be able to comfortably take care of all three of our children. And the only thing that might look different for us, given our schedules, would be we'd love to
Hmm.
travel a little bit more. But
Yeah, totally.
ultimately, his income and our family unit income could drastically change. But neither of us sees any drastic change in our day to day experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The change, I guess, will come in the comfort of knowing that we're just able to that much easier to take care of the things that are coming down the line, whether
Mhm.
that's for our kids or for our parents or whatever it might be. So I think there's some truth to that. We've
Yeah.
talked a lot about it, and I'm like, well, nothing's really going to look any different.
Yeah, totally. But I think that's an excellent point, that what you said about anybody who has been in a tough financial position knows that money can't buy happiness is not true. I think most importantly, what I have to remind myself of is that I have time. So I have time on my side, which is I have time both, any 29-year-old who's about to turn 30, any 30-year-old, any 36-year-old, any 40-year-old even, like, so even further than that, any 70-year-old, you have the luxury of time. And that's what money can buy you. And that's why people who have been, in situations of financial hardship understand that time is the biggest luxury that you can have and the biggest asset you can have. So I think about that a lot too as it relates to like my career. Do I absolutely adore it? Not really. Am I good at it? Yeah. And do I get some joy out of it? Occasionally. Sure. Am I paid well? Yeah. But it gives me a lot of flexibility and I have a lot of time. And I think that time has proven more and more as days go on to be probably the most valuable asset that I have.
I think about that a lot as well. I mean, like I said, am I climbing Mount Everest in my career aspect right now? No. Did I go have an hour and a half lunch with one of my friends to catch up and hit
Exactly.
a store on the way home to pick up some things I need for a party we're hosting this weekend? I did,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
am I making $1 million a year? No.
Hmm.
But did I have the luxury of scooting about town to do those things today in the middle of a workday when other people don't? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
also think as you get older and these things become clearer and you're able to focus in more on what's important to you, I realized through some coaching actually with my friend Anna, I realized that there are different ways that people operate in this world, and it's called human design. Have you ever done your human design? Okay.
I love human design.
Okay, well, let's not get on a tangent. However, I actually learned that I'm a projector, and projectors are people who are capable of seeing the big picture, putting all the pieces together, pulling people in to get those things done, and really that our capacity for work is quite small.
Mm.
Something I didn't know about myself. I've always prided myself on being a hustler. Like I'll work 6 a.m. to midnight, I'll get it
Yeah.
done. I'm the machine kind of thing. But that's actually far from true. And it makes sense as to why I was always feeling so burnt out, always
Mm.
feeling so tired. And now that I do work in that prescribed time frame on a daily basis, I'm so much happier. I'm so much lighter.
Yeah.
You can see it. My God, if you go look at pictures of me when I was 29, you'll be like, girl, what was going on? And I'm like, well, I was really sad and unhappy. Also drank a lot of wine and was like poisoning myself on a daily basis.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I guess as you get older, you mature and you figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Things come into focus that maybe weren't before. And you start to peel back all these things that you feel pressured to do because
Hmm.
society is telling you to do them.
Yeah.
We had Shannon on our podcast. I genuinely believe that anyone at any age can learn something from Shannon's book. Truth be told, I think it's really good if you're in the like 18 to 25-year-old range, 24-year-old range, something like that. But nonetheless, it's called You're Completely Normal. And it's just about how like Shannon's path looked different than everyone else's.
Mm.
So did mine. I don't have a single friend who, maybe this is because I got out of the South, but I don't have a single friend who like did the prescribed thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone's life looks different. And it's like weird that we've all been told or projected onto that there's one trajectory of success when it really, if you look around at all your friends, it's all something different.
Yeah.
The girl who
Well,
maybe has the incredible career, maybe she's not so happy in her relationship, or
yeah.
she doesn't have
Hmm.
time for her kids, or she has kids, but that's stressing her out. Like each
Yeah.
person kind of has their own
Yeah,
thing.
totally. It's funny that you say like there's not a single person who we know that has done it normally, because so much of I think internalized pressures that we have are a result of what we were told by previous generations, right? Like
Mm.
boomers to do. And so, my mom is a perfect example of this. My mom was a dental hygienist for 50, yes, 50 years, and did that her entire career. She loved it. She retired last year. And I think that is a perfect example of somebody who, like, my mom did everything in the exact order and then never once was pushing that onto her children, was never once saying, this is how you have to do it. And in
Mm.
fact, really, none of my siblings have done, or myself have done, sort of a quote traditional trajectory. Maybe my oldest sister to a degree, but even then, she went back to grad school at almost 40. She became a therapist around midlife. And like, you know, so none of us really took a standard route, because even though we had a parent who did the very normal thing, we also had a parent who didn't. And so it was a combination, I think, of my mom seeing that and being like, there's not just one way. And
Mm-hmm.
my spouse is doing it a different way. And so therefore, like, my children don't have to do it the same way. And so I'm grateful all the time for that, that my mom never, either of my parents never, you know, pushed a specific track
Trajectory.
onto me.
Right.
Yeah, they just kind of were like, whatever you want to do, sounds good, you know?
Yeah.
And that looked like a million different things. It looked like going to school 13 hours away from my home. It looked like moving to New York when I had never been there. It looked like, you know, just a bunch of crazy shit that my parents were like, yep, sounds good, you know, because they just know that the best way to build a life that you're proud of is to just try a bunch of different shit. And like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I feel very grateful for that. So I think that's another factor in all of this, is that we still kind of take on a lot of previous generations sort of way of doing things, even though we know it's really not sustainable to do it that way anymore.
I know. I feel like you're counseling yourself out of this existential crisis right now. How's it going? Are you having
You
any
know what?
realizations?
I I really don't like you know, I've been existential about this for like so long that it's sort of like, I think at this point I'm
Is
just
now
like
it just a shtick?
I'm losing steam, man. Like, I'm just
You gotta give
really
up.
losing. Yeah.
Maybe by the time you actually turn 30, you'll be like, okay.
Right. That's
Not
my
so
hope, is
bad.
that
Not
this
so
has been
bad.
going on for about 5 years now. So I think by the time I'm 30, I'll be like, it's cool. No biggie.
No biggie. I think we have that in common. My parents are actually Gen X. So my parents
Mm.
are 55. 55. And same. They just kind of
Yeah.
were, you know, they had me extremely young. So they were in figure it out mode for the whole duration of my childhood.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of learning together, but they never once were like, this is what you have to do.
Hmm.
And I really am so grateful for that, because I felt very strongly pulled away from the traditional path.
Hmm.
I did not want to go to the 4 year university. I did because I was scared. But that's what catapulted me to moving to New York, because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't fit in here. Like, I gotta go.
Hmm.
um,
Right.
and letting my teeth serving burgers at Planet Hollywood, you know, and
Yeah.
whatever. I learned a lot. I'm super glad for it. And here I am at 36, grateful for all of those experiences. And almost, I don't know that I'm quite excited to turn 40, but I do look forward to, like, what is the next echelon of this feeling?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
30s, I'm like, I no longer give a literal shit what anyone thinks about me, which I think is quite the feat, having been Miss America,
Oh,
where
absolutely.
I spent 5 to 8 years after riddled with what is the person thinking in the room about me, about the fact that I've gained weight, about the fact that I'm not doing some highly
Hmm.
successful career right now. I spent a lot of time concerned about what other people think. And just in the last year or so, I've been like, you know what?
Hmm.
The world's on fire. Everyone's a piece of shit. And I actually don't care.
That's
So
actually going on
I'm
on
gonna
a
wear
t-shirt.
I'm gonna wear my Yes Hillary shirt walking around Alabama, and you're gonna like it. And if you don't,
The world's on
I don't
fire.
care.
Everyone's a piece of shit, and I don't really care.
I don't really
I
care.
think that's the title of this episode.
I don't care if you like me. And that is new. That's new for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And it is so deep. Like, it's not even something I'm just saying anymore. I'm
Mm.
not going to places where I don't want to be around people that I don't like, and I actually don't care if you like me. So, someone else who at 40 changed the trajectory of her life and is now a name that not a single person on this planet doesn't know, I'm pretty sure. Vera Wang.
Yep. I wrote a little line, a little blurb in that Substack about something about, like, just when I start to remember that Vera Wang didn't start her line until she was 40 or something like that. And I actually was looking up people who I basically just typed into Google. This is just the most me thing ever to do at 12:30 a.m. and like typing into Google famous people who did cool stuff after 40. Like
Uh-huh.
and it was or like who became famous later in life. It's like
Yeah.
Vera Wang. I mean, so many people were on that list.
Samuel
So
L. Jackson, he
yeah,
he
yeah.
like didn't have a huge role until he was like 43 or something. I
Hmm.
mean, the mother of all mothers, Kris Jenner.
Yeah, iconic.
I don't know
Hmm.
that I don't know that we aspire to be like Kris Jenner in many
We
ways, but
don't.
except for who is doing her work?
Her
Maggie.
face. Oh my God. Her plastic surgeon needs to be. I mean,
Ooh.
we need the details. Her and Lindsay Lohan. I need the
What
details.
just happened? She just showed
Yep.
up and I was like, "Oh,
With a new face.
she's the oldest sister now."
Yeah,
Jesus.
literally. That's Kendall
But
and Kylie's
yeah, it's like
third.
Julia Childs and all of these
Hmm.
people who didn't even switch gears until
Yeah.
40, 50 years old. And not only did they switch gears, but they found happiness and built empires along the way.
Yeah.
So you have
I feel
much to
very
look forward
excited.
to in that regard.
Yeah. I feel very similar to you about I've heard that your 40s are like fucking awesome. And so I'm pretty like, let's wrap her up, you know? Like I'm ready to let's
Yeah,
get
just
to
skip
it.
the whole decade. See what happens.
No, I've also heard great things about your 30s and I am excited and I do think the existentialism is sort of like waning itself
A little
off.
bit.
But yeah, but it's still very like, it's any like major kind of birthday, I guess. It's turning 30. It's a big one.
Well, let's
So,
there were some people who wanted to
yeah.
share some thoughts, and I said I would keep it anonymous. So the first one says, "In my 20s, I knew I was in a bad relationship, I had a bad job, and I wasn't thriving. I turned 30, quit my job. A few months later, I filed for divorce and I moved out. My knowledge didn't change. I just didn't care what other people thought anymore. I hadn't worn a
Mm.
bikini since I had competed in a Miss America related competition at 24. I bought a hot, brand new pink bikini and I wore it to the beach every day. Turning 30 actually saved my life, and it saved the last shiny pieces of me that have now blossomed into my best self."
Oh my God.
I know, I actually just got chills reading
I
it out
know.
loud.
I'm like, am I gonna cry? Holy shit. Whoever wrote that, please come on our podcast.
Yeah, I'll have to ask her actually. Another one says, "I give less fucks in my 30s than I did in my 20s about things that really just don't matter."
Perfect.
So I think we covered that.
Yeah.
We've got, I love this one too. "I have more confidence in voicing my convictions without fear of being shunned. I also found true value in showing up for others."
I love that.
I don't know what decade we're talking about, but this one makes me laugh. This one says, "In my 30s, I asked the question, where did my metabolism go?"
Perfect.
That's so funny because my 30s are when I actually figured it out. I
I
figured
was gonna
out
say,
how to
yeah,
eat best for me, and true wellness is like the balanced life, all of that, but that made me
yeah,
laugh.
that's
Okay.
hilarious.
All right, this one. I woke up at 34 and asked myself, if my girls were in the marriage I was in and they asked me if they should stay, what would I tell them? When I realized I would tell them to leave, I decided to leave and I filed for divorce. I learned more about who I was, forgiveness for myself, and I began standing up for what I believed in the name of raising girls to also be strong women. I like that.
Oh, that's so good. Wow, I love that last one.
This one is from a person in her 60s, and she just wrote, "Gravity is not your friend." She said, "I'm all about skincare and I'm a huge fan of Botox and fillers, baby."
Perfect. I actually had a friend's mom who I worked with at a coffee shop during my early 20s crisis. And her mom and I became just really like, I just felt really connected to her mom. She was so cool. I still keep in touch with her. And she was like a marketing executive. She always came into the coffee shop with like her Prada purse. And I just thought she was like the baddest bitch. I was like, I love this woman. And she had I went home my first winter living in New York and I was in the coffee shop I had previously worked at and she walked in and I was like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you." We sat down and had some coffee together And I was like, "So how are things going for you? Like, what's up?" And she was like, she had just turned 60, and she was like, "Honey, I can tell you at 60 years old, it just keeps getting better." And I was like, "Oh," and I just never have forgotten that moment.